And welcome back to the first episode of the season, of the draft season, of Building the Board. Tonight, I am joined by Steve Letizia at CFC Bears on Twitter. Steve, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing okay. The Drew Dahlman news really was a big bummer on the day, but other than that, I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk NFL draft prospects, especially offensive line. We know we both love the offensive line. It's it's a big need for the Bears. Even bigger, it was big need. Left tackle was a need for the Bears before Drew Dahlman retired. Now, center is a need as well. So a lot of guys to talk about. Really excited to dive in.
Right. We talked a little bit on the pre-show about we were excited for O-line, but at the same time we were like, who cares about center? It was I was like, I haven't really watched any centers. I've watched like two. And you said, you've watched a few. You watched some of them like last year and the year before and stuff, guys who are finally coming out now. But we weren't like coming into this episode super well versed in center.
Yeah.
And now it's like we're scrambling, like we got to watch center. We got to figure this out now, at least for a week. We'll see what happens in free agency here.
We might have to do an emergency center pod in like a week or two.
Right. Yeah. But so most of this episode, this is the offensive line episode, and we're going to be talking mostly tackles, some guards, but we don't have a ton of center within our planned discussion here. But Steve, are there like a few names? So we have Trey Zuhn on our list of guys we're going to talk about who does project. He plays tackle, but projects best to center, has played some center. But outside of him, are there any guys that you want to kind of bring up at the start of the show here that we're not going to get the chance to get more in depth on?
Yeah, there's a couple of guys that kind of stand out that I think like fit the Bears, play style. One of the guys he's my offensive center one, Sam Hecht from Kansas State. I actually put a video out on Twitter a few weeks ago. I said he reminded me a lot of Bears center Drew Dahlman. So if the Bears agree, he might be an option. I think he moves really well. A lot of athleticism there. He can get out into space. He can get, do reach blocks. He can climb to the second level. Do a lot of things that Drew Dahlman did. There are other times, where Drew Dahlman had that snap and then, roll out and pass protect. He can do that as well. So I think that's a guy who makes a lot of sense. Logan Jones from Iowa is a name that's kind of been in the draft cycle for a few years now. So I've watched him, in 2024, 2025, and now, 2026 as well. So he's a guy really, really athletic. If you want to run the ball, he's probably the center that you want to draft first and foremost. You know how Iowa is; they don't throw the ball there. They run that outside zone pretty much exclusively. If that's what you want to do, and the Bears run some outside zone, I think that would make a lot of sense. A guy I'm not super high on, but I think makes fits what the Bears want is Jake Slaughter from Florida. I think he has some severe play strength issues, which is why I'm lower on him. But he is really, really athletic. He moves really well. So if that's the kind of the direction they want to go, you could probably get him on day 3. So if they do bring in, like they brought in Tyler Biadasz, I'm not sure if I'm even pronouncing that right, who the Commanders just Biadasz. Yeah, I think that's right. You bring a guy like that in who's maybe not, the long-term answer, but he can start here. Maybe you draft Jake Slaughter on day 3, get him in a weight room. Hopefully you can get him a little bit stronger. I think he's a guy who has starter potential, who might make sense for the Bears if that's the route they decide to go. Obviously, if they go for like a Tyler Linderbaum, that kind of changes that equation because he's your, center for the next 5-7 years. So those are some guys I'm kind of looking at. I need to do a lot more work on the center class. But those are guys. And we will talk about Trey Zuhn today. And a lot of people project him to center. He's actually taken snaps at center. We'll talk about him more, but another guy that we should look out for.
And a guy like I watched after work today. I watched a few games of Logan James or Jones. Logan Jones from Iowa, and I really liked his run blocking. Like I didn't mark a single dominant rep in the 2 games I watched from his run block, but it was like a lot of consistently good reps. But as I was wrapping up watching them, I was like, I don't think he was stressed in pass protection once.
Yeah.
And that's a big question. I don't know how the dude holds up in pass pro outside of a few reps where it was like, I don't really know that he can drop the hips in an anchor. That was the few reps that I saw. He was just kind of, bouncing backwards, not even like a clean bounce. But outside of that, it's like, I want to see that get tested more. So I'm gonna have to find some more tape on him to keep watching. But outside of that, like all I know about Jake Slaughter is he has a kick-ass name. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, no, with Jones, he does have those dominant reps in run blocking. If you keep watch more games, you'll see them. I have a video on him as well. He has some actually like really dominant. It's not like you said, he's probably more consistent, but he does have those dominant reps. And with him, it's just there's not as much. There's not many pass block reps to really even evaluate him. Even the pass block reps he does have, it's a lot of play action. Kind of getting him on the move. I think there's like a stat going out. If you look at like just PFF, like he didn't allow a single sack and only 8 pressures this year. It's like, yeah, but not really. He didn't really. That's kind of a misleading stat with him. Pass protection is definitely a question mark, but he's a really good run blocker. So I think you could work with him and get him to a point where you'd be comfortable with him as a pass blocker. But with that being said, it's tough to draft that guy and try and say he's going to be our center week 1, 2020, start of 2026 season because of that. So I think he's
be real confident.
Even though I think he's a day 2 pick, I think you really want to kind of ease him into that situation.
Yeah. And in the comments here, they're asking about Pat Coogan out of I'm assuming this is Indiana and Notre Dame. Have you paid any attention to him?
I watched him, last year because he was at Notre Dame last year, and he ended up transferring to Indiana instead of declaring for the draft. I think I have him as like my 9th center, but to be honest, I needed to watch way more of him before I could really give an honest to God scouting report on him.
Well, and that's where a lot of this stuff's going to get interesting too. Like, because, like you said, trusting a rookie center that's a tall task.
Yeah.
So I fully expect the Bears to find a veteran route. Maybe it's Tyler Biadasz. Maybe it's someone else. Maybe they like Luke Newman as a developmental guy, but they just don't think he's quite there yet, but he's getting there. Or maybe they say we want to get a center in the later rounds who we're going to develop again because we think that Newman has chops at guard and we think that we can develop someone else for center. I'm down with that plan too. The only plan I'm not very down with is signing a veteran who's not named Tyler Linderbaum or the guy from Buffalo who used to be with the Cowboys. There's 2 of them in the league. I forget his name off the top of my head.
Is it McGovern?
Yeah, Connor McGovern. Or Connor McGovern. Those are the 2 free agents who I'm like, okay, if you sign them, like, I'm okay with not having a clear plan going forward beyond that. But outside of those 2, it's like anyone you sign is like, I want a developmental guy on the roster behind him because that's just a Band-Aid and you need a real plan. And it's like, outside of signing Dahlman, there has not been a real plan at center since really Olin Kreutz retired, it feels like.
Yeah, Biadasz, I agree with you what you said. And Biadasz is I agree, more of a stopgap, but I think that is a legitimate like avenue to that they could take, assign him for probably cheaper. I think I don't know why the Commanders released him, to be honest. Everything I read from Commanders fan was it came as a surprise in that he played well last year. He's not a Drew Dahlman. He's not as good as a Drew Dahlman, but I think he could be serviceable. And like you said, then but if you do that, I like the idea of drafting a center somewhere, even as high as maybe the 3rd round if the guy's there that you really want to kind of develop as the long-term option.
Who is the Commanders' new OC? It's a Shanahan guy. Isn't it like a Kubiak guy?
Most likely, just because that's who everyone's hiring. I'll take a wild guess to say that's right.
It's David Blau, so he was under Ben Johnson at one point. That's interesting.
That's also the other part of this is I'm kind of in a situation where this isn't obviously good, but in Ben we trust. Like we started Theo Bennett at left tackle for 6-7 games, and the offense still was managed to be successful. Well, so I do think it also maybe makes. If maybe not center so much, but maybe they might be more willing to maybe spend more on left tackle as well, like a higher pick on left tackle, because you'd be like, well, center, we're taking a hit at center, but let's make sure we have left tackle, left guard, and right tackle figured out, and we'll work around the center. I don't know if that's actually what's gonna happen, but it might be something they do.
So I agree with you. Like it's easy, not easy, but it's more capable. You're more capable of masking one spot. But now the Bears have 2 spots that they need to mask, theoretically. But where this also could get interesting, and this is just speculation, he hasn't played here a lot, but Jonah Jackson has played center in his career. I
That's
haven't
true.
watched those snaps to see if they were actually good, if there's any limitations there. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any in particular, but other than like, I guess at center you need to be quick left and right. And Jackson does have some issues moving to his left that have shown up in overtime and pass pro. But I don't know if does it put guard on the table for the
That's
Bears
a good
draft
point.
picks if they're saying Jackson can kick into center and then we'll have a better guard out there.
It might be a situation where they just their plan is we're gonna just draft the best offensive lineman we can get, and then just get our five guys out there, best five guys out there, and maybe that is moving Jonah Jackson to center. Maybe that's maybe that I know they said they didn't want to do it, but maybe it is moving Tooney out to left tackle and putting and drafting a left guard or something like that. I think that might be something.
Or even my favorite that I've been talking about since before the offseason started, moving Darnell Wright to left tackle and drafting one of these right tackles that are out there.
That's true. I'm sure we'll talk about that plenty because there's a lot of right tackles that are out there.
There's a ton. But with all that being said, let's get to our main event here. And it is March. It's time for March Madness. So we're doing our offensive line draft prospect breakdown in a March Madness format where we have these seeds might not all make the most sense, but we thought this was the way that it made sense for the most entertaining show. So we're starting this off. We're looking at our 1 seed, Francis Mauigoa out of Miami, their right tackle, up against Northwestern's own Caleb Tiernan. And I'm just going to toss this to you, Steve. What do you think about these two players, and like where does your head go when you see this 1-16 matchup?
Yeah, I mean, my head goes. It's a little lopsided from like a talent standpoint. Obviously, I mean that's no shot at Caleb Tiernan, who's a player I do like. But Mauigoa, I think, I believe he's my offensive tackle 1. I believe he might be yours as well. He's a lot of people, tackle 1 in this draft class. Scouting him over the summer, I actually had him as a guard. I had him in my tackle rank because I had him lower because I was like, I think he's going to be a guard. Watching him this year, I have more faith that he could stick at tackle than I did over the summer. And then when he went to the combine and he had 33 and what did he have? 33, just over 33-inch arms. I think that's plenty long, for him to stick at tackle. He kind of does have a guard's build, but just a really wide frame. But with that wide frame, it's difficult for guys to get to his edge all the time. I think he does have some athletic limitations. I wish he would have tested at the combine, but I understand why he didn't because he's a projected top 10 pick, top 15 pick at worst. The length issues do show up from time to time, but man, this guy's just really, really powerful. Does everything really at a high level. He might not have, the ceiling of a guy you would typically see drafted in the top 10. He's not like a Joe Alt or, some of these other guys or, some of these other guys we've seen, Olu Fashanu get drafted the last couple of years in the top 10. I don't think he has that ceiling, but you're just getting a guy who's going to come in. He's going to be your right tackle from day one. And he's going to be at the very least solid, early on in his career. And if the other thing about him is if for some reason he those athletic limitations, length limitations show up more often than you want them to, you move him inside to guard and you have a kick-ass, probably all pro right guard in the NFL. So I think he's, probably, if we're just talking Bears, there's no chance he gets to pick 25. So that kind of, you have to keep that in mind as well. But a really good player. And with Tiernan, obviously he's going to be very much in play for the Bears. You can get him probably in the, I don't know. I'm curious where you have him. I would say probably 3rd, 4th round.
I think 3rd round. That is kind of where I have him slated. I don't think he reaches the 4th, but to me, I mean, I think he goes in a similar range to where you saw a Braden Smith or a Bernard Raymond go.
Yeah. So you can get him with that pick 89, maybe even if you took him with 57. I don't think that would be a crazy reach. But yeah, a guy who kind of is similar build to Ozzy Trapillo, with really tall 6'8", but doesn't have super long arms. What did he have? He actually had much shorter arms than Trapillo, just over 32 inches. So it's a tough. I like his tape, to be honest. I like his tape. I think he doesn't have great length, but I think he has good, accurate strike, good timing with his hands. I think he uses his hands independently, which is really nice. He doesn't have the greatest foot quickness, but I think he probably has enough to stick at left tackle if that's what you want him to do. But I just don't like the really tall build with short arms. That's a tough build because you're going to struggle at left tackle because you got the short arms, but you also don't have the really it's going to be a difficult transition to inside the guard as well because you're always going to get out leverage. He's got really long legs and he struggles with knee bend. So I think he's a guy that I originally had kind of like as a tackle guard, but I'm kind of starting to think that he's a tackle only and with short arms, which is not a great profile to have. But I do think he has some utility. At least I think you can get at least a swing tackle out of him, and maybe a guy who can give you some starts. Like I said before, the Bears got production out of Theo Benedict. They could easily get production out of Caleb Tiernan if that's the way they want to go.
So, man, you're right. 6'8", short arms, like that becomes a question. But I actually thought he was very light on his feet. I felt like his feet moved very quickly when he knew what he was doing. I felt like this was a player who didn't know what he like. There's a lot of coaching that needs to occur with this player in my mind.
Yeah.
Because I saw very quick feet, able to cover ground laterally and vertically, like when he's confident in what he's doing. And a really loose, pliable frame, like flexible head to toe. I was really impressed by his ability to arch his back, bend his back, absorb power with that, and getting to really stay connected through very awkward angles with core strength and core flexibility. I think that there's a lot of traits there that say like, this guy can work. But at the same time, I saw a guy who really struggled to hit his angles, find his pathways on secondary blocks up to the second level. I thought that he really struggled against longer defenders who were able to his hands are not well coached, well developed at this point. I didn't think you're right. He can work them independently, but I felt like he got predictable at times with them and stuff where defenders could kind of read what he's doing and get into his chest pretty easily. I thought his hands were very fast. But again, those aiming points, that knowledge of how to counter guys, how to bait guys, like that stuff I thought needed some work. So to me, he's more of a developmental prospect and I think he has the physical tools to be able to stay at tackle. Whether he ever reaches that point is a different question. But I think that with the foot speed, with the pliability, the bendability, honestly, he reminded me a decent amount of Theo Benedict just from a physical profile. I think that he has less of the bad habits that Theo has of just bending at the waist and diving. But I think physically there's a lot of similarities there. Ultimately, I mean, Mauigoa is probably my favorite prospect I've watched in this class of any position, just because I love his play style. I love the way that he plays the game. He reminds me a ton of Darnell Wright. He's not as developed as Darnell Wright was with his hands in pass pro, because Darnell Wright was on a different level with his hands in pass pro in college. But just the demeanor, the athleticism paired with the size, he's a rare tackle, especially in a league where we are seeing so much 12 and 13 personnel become standard. A tackle's range, I think, is becoming less important. It's always going to be very important, right? Those guys who have the full range to be able to get out wide and really just erase speed rushers, it's always going to be the most valuable guy. But I don't think it's as valuable as it once was right now, where you're seeing the Bears able to put an Ozzie Trapillo out there who might not have that range, able to get Darnell Wright to an all-pro who might not quite have that same range. In that league, I think Francis Mauigoa is extremely valuable because he can run block like a guard and he can pass pro well enough for a tackle. So to me, he is the clear winner here.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So we're just going to go in order here. So now we have our 8 and 9 seed. At the 8 seed, we have Max Iheanachor. I think I pronounced that right. And at the 9 seed, we have Caleb Lomu. And Steve, where's your head at with this matchup?
This one's a lot more interesting, in terms of a matchup. I mean,
classic 8-9
matchup. Go either way. But these are two really good prospects, and I think they're going to go in a similar range. That they look to me like they're both going to kind of go in the back end of the first round. I think Lomu's tape is a little bit more advanced. I would say, probably a little bit more pro ready. He's got some things to work on, obviously. One thing, he just needs to get a little bit stronger. I think he has some, play strength issues from time to time, but I really like Lomu. He's a guy I've talked about a lot kind of on my podcast. And I said, this is a guy who he was a redshirt sophomore. If he decided to not declare for the NFL draft and went back to college to Utah for another year, we could potentially be talking about a top 10 pick. Kind of like I said with Mauigoa, he didn't have that typical, top 10 pick, length and body build and maybe potential ceiling. I think Lomu has that ceiling. And he could potentially been a top 10 pick next year if he went back. But with him, like I said, he's got some, I think some play strength issues. I think Iheanachor kind of has a similar thing. Another guy who I don't know if he's a redshirt sophomore. I don't remember exactly what year he is, but if he went back to school, he could have easily been, a top 10 pick next year. He is relatively new to football. I believe he just started playing football in 2021
I
at the
have him as a
JUCO level.
Senior, but
Redshirt senior.
He's very new to football.
He's very new. He's only played like 2 years at Arizona State, but he was at the JUCO levels. That makes sense. But he's if we talk about ceiling, I think both these guys have good ceilings. I think Iheanachor has a step above in terms of ceiling. Because he's got, the size, he's got the length. He's like 325 pounds, something like that, but carries it extremely well. You would not guess that guy was 330 pounds almost based on his build. I thought he was going to be I thought when I was watching him before I actually really looked him up, I thought he was close to 300 pounds. But no, he's a solidly built 320 pounds. He's got really good length. He's very raw still. And I believe he's only played, I could be wrong. I believe he's only played right tackle. So if we're talking Bears fit between these two guys, I think even though I like Iheanachor just, for his ceiling, I think the Bears would much prefer Lomu just because I don't see them. I shouldn't say they won't do it because you never want to say that. But I think they would prefer to have a guy who played left tackle in college who can just come in right away. And give you some snaps there. Even though Lomu, I think, has some development that he needs, I think he would be able to come in and be kind of under that Theo Benedict plan, to start chips, a lot of help, heavy play. They're going to obviously have heavy play action. I think he could give you what Theo Benedict and Naz Trapilo gave you last year early on, and then hopefully by the end of the year, you kind of, give him a little bit more freedom. But both guys are really intriguing. This is a tough one, but I would probably lean Lomu just because he plays left tackle. That's kind of like they're pretty evenly graded, for different reasons. Just to break the tie, I'd give it to the left tackle.
Steve, this one is so hard for me.
I know.
And you're right, they are very evenly graded. I have Iheanachor at a 7.31 and Lomu at a 7.35. And honestly, that is entirely positional value. Because if we put positional value maxed out for every position, I have Iheanachor at a 7.62 and Lomu at a 7.46. So yeah. I have Iheanachor better when we take positional value out of it. But once we put positional value in, I have Lomu higher because, like you said, he's the left tackle here, and Iheanachor has never played left tackle. He's only played right tackle or at least at the D1 level. I don't know what he did at JUCO. I assume maybe he played left tackle at JUCO, but I love Iheanachor. I love this guy's game. I fell in love with this dude's tape the second I put it on, even though the first two notes I have on him are failed to recognize linebacker blitz, allowed free runner through the B gap, failed to set the edge against longer edge defender, arm length questions. There aren't arm length questions. He just didn't get his hand set. But then I move on to very quick feet for his size. Powerful punch in pass and run game. Easily bench pressing defenders in the run game and stunning them in pass protection. This guy can dent pass rushers, dent defenders against the run. He's really just, and when I say dent, I'm talking if he punches a car, he's leaving a dent in that thing, a deep dent. And that's what he does to defenders. He moves them with his punch. He gets them off the spot. And that, I adore that in offensive tackles. That's something I distinctly look for. But it's something that Caleb Lomu really doesn't bring. Caleb Lomu is very much a zone run blocker, very much a cutoff blocker. He's not moving guys off the line of scrimmage in my mind. He's just getting in the way and setting in positioning. Very similar to what Drew Dahlman was at center, right? Like he's not really bringing that impact power block, but he's very good in pass pro. He's very clean, very tidy. Everything is very well developed in pass pro, I think. And where I get hung up on Lomu is I'm not sure how much the run blocking aggression and that side of it is really teachable. You know, I think that's kind of either you have it or you don't. And that's where like Lomu worries me a little. That combined with the he's skinny. His legs are pretty skinny, and I that makes me wonder how much more mass can this guy's frame really hold. I'm not sure what he weighed in at. I assume he weighed in a touch over 300 because if he didn't, I think I would have noticed. But I like watching him. I felt like he was playing like 290, and that's tough in the NFL. But like I said, he's a very natural pass protector, and his movement abilities are really impressive.
Yeah, he's got really quick feet. I mean, he can mirror guys. He can stay in front of guys. He was 313 at the combine because I have it up in front of me.
Wow.
That shows him sit, which is surprising to me as well. That didn't catch my eye when he weighed in at that. But that also, well, I was gonna say who knows? He might have just bulked up from combine, but he also put up some decent testing numbers at that weight. Yeah. But I still think he, like I said before, he has play strength issues. To me, he doesn't move the guys off the ball like you said. And that's something that, if he has play strength issues and he was playing at 313, then yeah, you're not putting much more weight on that frame to kind of resolve that. So, but yeah, Iheanachor, the no play strength issues there. I did like the tenacity with which he plays, the punch, you said everything like that, moving guys off the ball. And he also tested, I expected him to test well. Like I thought this was, this guy's athletic, obviously. But the 4.91 and the 40 at 321 pounds is like freak athleticism. 1.73 10-yard split as well. Good broad jump, decent vertical. Like this guy, this sky's the limit for him. And he, the other thing about him is he went to the Senior Bowl because he had some rough around the edges tape at times. He went to the Senior Bowl and looked really, really good, especially in one-on-ones, and especially he looked even better, I thought, in the team drills than he did even in the one-on-ones. So he kind of went, and I thought that solidified him. I bumped up my grade on him, and if he played left tackle, I would be pounding the drum for him at 25, like incessantly. Well, maybe he wouldn't, but if he would be there, I'd be pounding the table for him. But with both these guys, I mean, you're not getting them at 57. So if you want to take them, you're taking them at 25.
Yeah, and like. With Iheanachor, I feel like we both kind of wax poetic on him. It is messy at times. Like his run footwork can be a complete mess. Like there is a lot to work on. It's just this guy has played football for 5 years?
Yeah,
and he's already this good. And it's like I can't. This might be very flawed thinking, but I just have to think you get him with the NFL coaches, and it's just going to continue to grow.
Yeah. The other thing about it's funny that these two guys are matched up. I just thought about this, but watching both of these guys against David Bailey, Iheanachor was clearly better against David Bailey. Iheanachor was probably the best tackle against David Bailey that I watched this year, and Lomu struggled against Bailey a little bit, which, David Bailey is a really good pass rusher. There's no shame there, but, if we're just that's a nice, just kind of if we're comparing these two players, that's a nice little kind of thing to mention there. I think Iheanachor, I might change my mind. I'm switching to Max. Let's get him. I'm just gonna start calling him Max. It's easier. Let's get him in the next round.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I know I one of my notes that I wrote down is did not truly get beaten by David Bailey until the third quarter. It was one of the notes that I had written down, and everyone lost to David Bailey this year. So that one,
let's go Iheanachor.
Okay, I was just saying for this exercise, we have to go Lomu, but
you're probably right.
And here's the other thing. Here's the other thing with it, though. Ben values the guy who is more than a pass protector, I believe. So I have a hard time seeing them taking Lomu just because I don't think he fits what Ben wants. We've seen this regime not have a problem telling guys to switch sides. You know,
Yeah.
we saw them do it just last year with Ozzie. We've seen them do it with, if we go back to Detroit, with Penny Sewell. We saw them do it with Jonah Jackson. Had never played right guard a lot before last year. They didn't care. They said, you're playing right guard. So like, this regime doesn't seem to care that much about that.
The other thing about Iheanachor is, he just started playing football in 2021, which we've mentioned, which is like a positive and a negative, but it also means one thing about him is he doesn't really have super bad habits. Like, he has things he needs to clean up, like, clearly, but there aren't like bad habits that are entrenched in him, if you know what I mean. So that might actually make his transition to left tackle a little bit easier. And like you said, he might have played left tackle at the JUCO level a lot. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think like, that could make some sense.
That's a good point. He's not entrenched in his like,
he's
only been doing it for a handful of years. It's not like he's like, I've played this side my whole life,
Yeah. And most guys most guys in college will cross train, especially the guys who know they have an NFL future. They're cross training, all the time. Like Isaac Trapillo said, he was taking staff as a left tackle, in college. But it also really just depends on the player. Like, it's not so it's like, oh, it's easy to do or it's hard to do. It's so player specific. Like, some guys can do it, some guys can't do it. So I don't know. It just depends on how comfortable he is. I'm sure if they're interested in him, they'll have a private workout with him and they'll put him at left tackle and see how he does. But
all right, now we have a 5-12 matchup with 5 seed Monroe Freeling versus 12 seed Austin Barber. Steve, where's your head at?
I like both these players a lot. I want to start with that. Monroe Freeling is my offensive tackle too. I think he's absolutely fantastic as a prospect, I should say. Maybe not as a left tackle, because he's got some things he needs to work on. But the athleticism in everything he does is just so evident when you watch his tape, whether it's in pass protection, just with like quick feet to mirror, or and change of direction skills, or whether it's in run blocking when he gets out in space, or just, getting to the second level and sealing, I shouldn't say he understands ankles very well, because I think that's something he actually needs to work on. But he can get to the second level. He doesn't always hit his landmark, but he gets there in a hurry. Needs to have a better feel for angles. But really like him as an athlete. The guy's built in a lab to play left tackle. What I have over 6'7", 315 pounds, almost 11-inch hands, almost 35-inch arms, 84.5-inch wingspan. Like, that is just so perfect. And then he runs a 4.93 with a 1.71 10-yard split. Like, the guy is just an athletic freak. I was really hoping that he would be available for the Bears at 25. I don't think there's much of a chance with that anymore. But really, really good prospect. If this is a guy who, I've said this about a lot of guys now, but this is a guy who, if he went back to college, he would be a top 5, 10 pick next year easily, assuming he, continued his trajectory. Because I think he did also get much better as the year went on. If you watch his early season tape, it's not bad. It's good. You can still see the athleticism. But watch his bowl game against Ole Miss. That was probably one of the best left tackle tapes I watched this year, including Mauigoa. So really, really good prospect. But I also really like Austin Barber. Freeling's probably going to win this matchup, just, spoiler alert. But Austin Barber, I think, is a really good prospect in his own right. He has some issues as well, but one thing I really like about him, or everyone's going to really like about him, is he's just really, really experienced, which I think is something that is taken for granted, with offensive line prospects. I saw something earlier today. Someone tweeted out, like, this was actually about Blake Miller, but I think the same thing applies to Austin Barber. Yeah, when a guy has 3,000 snaps in the college level, you're going to see a lot of clips of him getting beat. That doesn't mean that's who he is as a prospect. And there are clips of Austin Barber getting beat, but he plays. He just has a ton of experience. He's got really good size. What is it? 6'7", 318, just over 33 inch arms. Really good size, decent athleticism. He's kind of like he doesn't really have a true calling card, I think is my biggest issue with him, but he does everything at an average, level or and some things above. So I think he's a guy who would certainly be in play for the Bears if they decide to go defense early. Again, I think he's probably like a third, maybe fourth rounder. Probably third rounder I would put him at. And he's another guy who, he could probably play left tackle in a pinch. Not in a pinch. I think he could play left tackle but he also could move inside. I think he's got some utility there as well. So a guy I really like. It's going to be tough to beat Monroe Freeling, but I think Barber is kind of like a perfect option for the Bears because he can kind of fill a variety of roles, and he just brings a lot of experience. I think that's what the Bears really need at that position right now. Like, as much as I love Monroe Freeling, and I would absolutely take him at 25, it might be a little bit of a learning curve, more of a learning curve with him, which I don't know if the Bears can necessarily afford. They kind of need someone who can step in right away and at least play at an average level, and that to me is Barber. But I'll take Freeling in this matchup every day.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think this is Freeling pretty clearly, and I agree with you on a lot of stuff with Freeling. I think he brings, like, the first game that I watched to him, I was like, it was one of his best games, and I was like, okay, this is OT1, like, hands down.
Mm-hmm.
And then I watched 3 more games and found some more of the weaknesses, some more of the issues, and he doesn't have a lot of tape. He hasn't bad experience of a player, so like his film grade gets knocked some for me on that. I think that he has what I said. Like someone Mason West from the Bare Bones podcast asked me right after I watched him. He's like, "What do you think of him?" And I was like, it seems like he's a good athlete for his size, but like I'm not sure. I'm not totally sold that he's a great athlete outside of for his size. And obviously this guy in combine that got proved up. He's an outstanding athlete for the position, period. But I didn't feel like he necessarily played like an outstanding athlete, period. Because really my one concern with him, and I stewed on this a lot, was his ability to take away speed on his outside shoulder. Like, I felt like he did get beat a decent amount by that. And we were just talking about with Francis Mauigoa and that, in the iteration of the league that we're seeing right now, that might not be the most important thing. But to me, that does limit his ceiling to an extent. I couldn't give him an all-pro ceiling. I gave him a consistent Pro Bowl ceiling because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that does bring him down a touch lower to me. He's OT3 for me. I do have Spencer Fano just a hair above him still, despite the arm length issues at the combine. But I love Monroe Freeling. I think that he is an outstanding prospect, but there is a decent amount to still develop there. I think he's probably, if the Bears could have, one offensive lineman on this board, he's the one that makes the most sense because he's a left tackle, right? Like, he fills your left tackle need while bringing left tackle traits that you need, that you look for consistently. Like, he is that guy as a prospect.
Mm-hmm.
Barber, at first, I was thinking maybe get him in the 4th round. I think he's creeping into mid-3rd now, maybe even early 3rd. He has the traits. Guys who have the traits might even go in the late 2nd. Like, maybe he's an option for the Bears in the late 2nd. I don't know. Like, we saw years ago, Wanye Morris go in the late 2nd to the Kansas City Chiefs. He was a guy I had in the 4th round early, crept him up into 3rd round. So it was like, he has all the traits. I think Austin Barber fits a similar aspect there. When I flipped on his tape, the power was just evident, and I thought that he was very eager to hit people, which is something that I want to see out there. Once he got latched, I thought he did a really good job with contact balance and having nimble feet to stay latched and keep his feet under the block. But when he wasn't latched, that became more of an issue of keeping his feet under him and not, lunging out and losing some balance stuff. I thought that he worked in tandem with his offensive guard really cleanly to sort through junk, which I think is an underrated thing to see. I thought that he worked well with his teammates, and that's so important on the O-line, I think. But one of the things that stood out to me in the negative way was I thought he was extremely reliant on the 2-hand punch. You could see defenders start to time it up and start to really take advantage of it. And I thought that his in space, he was a little awkward or a little clunky at times. Like, he's very athletic, but it seemed like he just had a hard time knowing his landmarks and hitting them consistently. And the last thing from the negative that I had was his game against Texas A&M. They were just abusing him with a wide speed rusher, which gave me some questions about his range and burst, which, again, I said earlier, I don't think is as important right now in the NFL as it has historically been. But in that game, they seemed to find an Achilles heel of his with it and kept hitting it over and over.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Texas A&M game because that was definitely one of his worst games. And it's funny because his 2 worst games were the Texas A&M game against Cassius Howell and the Miami game against Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor. And you might say like, yeah, those guys beat everyone, but it's like if you want to be a left tackle in the league, those are the kind of athletes and those are the kind of guys you're in power that you're going to be going up against on a day-to-day, on every game basis in the NFL. So if you can't hold up against those guys, how are you going to hold up, in the NFL when you're facing that, those guys more consistently? But I do think I really like him as a run blocker. I think he, like you said, you power in the run game. A guy, there's a couple guys on here that we've talked about and we're going to talk about that don't really move guys off the ball, but Austin Barber was one of those guys. Austin Barber can actually create some displacement in the run game, but also has enough athleticism to get on the move and hit his landmarks as well. So, I'm glad you brought up the Texas A&M game.
I did think Barber was kind of interesting too. I think that he ended up measuring a little taller than what he was listed. But when I first watched him, I was thinking this guy might be able to play guard too, because I think he was listed at 6'6". So I was like, okay, he's not one of these 6'8" dudes. Like you might be able to put this guy in front of Caleb and be okay at guard.
Yeah, I mean 6'7", 318. I think he could play guard for the Bears. I don't know if, like you said, because Caleb, you don't want a 6'7" guard. But I think he, for another team, he could potentially play guard. I know we don't like, super tall guards, but I think there are guards who are 6'7" who, can hold their own. So I think that's one option for him.
So now we're on to our 4-13 matchup. We got Kadyn Proctor out of Alabama against Blake Miller out of Clemson. And Blake Miller's a right tackle. Kadyn Proctor's a left tackle. I think Blake Miller has played a little left, but nothing notable. Now, one of the things that's interesting here to me is because Kadyn Proctor's 6'7", like he measured something around there, like that too tall to play guard for the Bears, I think, range.
Yeah, 6'6.5", 352 pounds.
But something that I think is interesting with Proctor, and I'll let you, I'll toss to you here in a sec before I'm not gonna get into too many positives and negatives, but something I think is really interesting. I think he plays with really good knee bend, which makes me say he might be able to convert to guard if Ozzie comes back and you feel good about Ozzie at left tackle still. But what do you think about this matchup, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have him just as a guard in their evaluation, and I agree with you. He does play with really good knee bend. I thought he was going to be like closer to 6'5", just because he plays with such good knee bend. And then also, with that, moving to guard there aren't many 352-pound offensive tackles in the NFL because it's difficult to play the position at that level. At that weight, I should say. And we talked about a little bit about this kind of on Twitter. He was listed at 360 at Alabama, and there are people at the combine who said, before the weigh-ins that he looked really, really trim, really good. And then he weighed in at 352. So it got me thinking, like, what did this guy actually play at 370, 380? Like probably something like that in the NFL in college.
I think like in 2024, he had to be playing like 380. And then there was talk about like him cutting weight last season. I must have been like 365, 370 if he's only 350 at the combine.
Right. So, yeah. So in terms of left tackle, let's talk a little bit about the left tackle. I mean, the size is one thing, and the size is apparent. And I love my big offensive tackles. I'm a sucker for a big offensive tackle, maybe too much so, but it does impact his ability to play left tackle. He just he doesn't have the change of direction to stay in front of some of those more athletic offensive linemen. He can get anytime he faces an inside. Sometimes he can recover on an inside move, but a lot of times he can get beat to the inside as well as the outside just because he doesn't have the foot speed and the change of direction and the ability to counter these guys who are really, really athletic. If you try to run through him, you're going to have some problems. Although I will say, for a guy who is 6'6.5", 352 pounds, and calling card is his size and strength, I thought he got beat through his chest more often than I'd want him to. I'm not going to say play strength is an issue for him because it's obviously not. But I did think that there were times where guys did kind of run through his chest and maybe not, win the rep, but knock him back, 2-3 steps. Where if you are that big, I kind of expect you to just kind of absorb that and not give up any ground. So I think even still, there's some things he needs to work on there. But he does play with really good knee bend. He's got good length. He's got good size. But to me, I don't know. I probably have him as a guard in my final rankings. I still have him a tackle right now, but I'm probably going to have him as a guard in my final rankings.
Yeah, and so for my notes, I mean, it's very bipolar here, and to be clear, like I watched, but before, like in season this year, I watched a few games of his 2024 tape, and I was like, I hated it. Like I was like, this guy is not a fourth round pick, even like type vibes on him.
Mhm.
I had to throw those games out after watching a few 2025 games. So I was like, this is a different player now than it was last year. So I threw those grades away and started over. Um, and I still end up with very bipolar notes. Like one of my notes, I'll start with the positives. His power is fucking outrageous. It's a
Mhm.
very special talent physically. Um, this dude just, let's see. Yeah, it's different. The way that this guy can move at the size that he is with the power that he brings is insane.
Mhm.
Now, I'd like to see him show that more consistently. You know,
Right.
he has reps during a game where it's like, how is this guy ever going to lose a run block? And then he has other reps where it's like, why did he just let this guy punch him in the mouth?
Right.
Um, and one of my notes is just that he kept letting dudes punch him in the mouth and let edge defenders who are way smaller than him set a hard edge against him in the run game. That's not like that. That was just odd to me. And I'm like, here's the thing with Kadyn Proctor to me. He can be an absolute weapon in the run game when you have him going right. But to stay at offensive tackle, the pass protection plan is going to need to protect him a lot because of his burst might be really good for 350, 360 pounds, but it's still not good enough in my mind for him to be on an island against speed rushers, on an island against even like adequate speed rushers, you know, not even talking
Mhm.
like the Von Millers of the world, but just guys who are good enough at winning that outside edge because he's gonna give the inside shoulder consistently. The change of direction is a
Yeah.
real issue there, and I don't know how you protect against that without just sending help his way outside so he can play more inside out. He's interesting to me because of the guard aspect, where it's like you can keep him at tackle for the first year, let him fail there first, and still have a fallback
Mhm.
plan of Ozzie with Kadyn Proctor taking over for Jonah Jackson in a year, maybe, or something like that. That's where it gets interesting to me, but like the consistency really worries me with him. And the weight
Yeah.
really worries me with him when I look at a DeJuan Jones who's dealt with, you know, foot injuries over and over, like a Trent
Mhm.
Brown who's constantly in and like Trent Brown's had a really good career, but he's dealt with so many
Yeah.
stress fractures in his feet from that weight. Mekhi Becton has had so many health issues. The human body, I just don't think is made to play at this weight. So it makes it really hard for me to trust taking that player.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with everything you said. And with him, it's like if you, I feel like if you could get him to 340, 335, 340, that would be. I feel like then some of his. I mean, he's obviously a super athletic guy for his size. So if you just take that athleticism and get it in a 340-pound frame, then I think he has no problem staying at tackle. Like
Right.
I mean that I mean I don't think he has the foot quickness at his size right now to really stick at left tackle. But minus 15 pounds, maybe he would have enough quickness, enough ability to change direction because he's clearly very athletic for his size. But that for his size, asterisk only gets you
Mhm.
so far. So I'm surprised he didn't weigh in at like 340 at the combine, something like
Yeah.
that, just to show teams that like, hey, I'm serious about this. I mean, and maybe 350 is a really good weight for him, and it is down, 20 pounds from his playing weight. I don't know, but I would like to see him come in a little bit lighter because right now, um, I don't think he can play left tackle in the NFL. But that being said, like if we're just talking about from like a Bears standpoint, I do agree with you. The fact that I do think he could play left tackle, in a Ben Johnson offense because we saw, not the best left tackles play last year in the Bears, front office. And we have a guy at Kadyn Proctor's size and athleticism. I have full faith that Ben Johnson could put him in a position to succeed. And then, yeah, if Ozzie Trapilla comes back and you want him to be your left tackle, then yeah, he has a utility inside at guard. So I do think he's in play for the Bears at 25 if he's there. But I do just wish he was a little bit lighter. If he was a little bit lighter, I think it would. I think if he maybe I should rephrase that. If he's a little bit later, he might not make it to 25, but I do think that's probably his best chance of sticking to left tackle.
If let's see, I had one note here that I just need to say because I wrote it in all
Yeah.
caps. Use your hands earlier in the rep. It drove me nuts in his tape. Like that goes to what you're saying though. A little bit lighter, a little bit better with his hands, a little bit more like more range. Like there's just a lot of like if he just could get a little bit more there, he could stay a tackle. But I'm just not sure he will ever get there. But like you said, I do think he's fully in play for the Bears at 25 because it's hard to pass on this type of difference maker in the run game. Like he can be an absolute weapon when he's right.
Imagine what Ben Johnson could do with him in the run game.
Right.
Like I feel like you could. I mean, just from a left tackle standpoint, I feel like he'd get creative. You can get him on the move. You can he could do a lot of stuff with him.
Yeah, his interviews would be so important. But how about Blake Miller? Yeah. How are you seeing him as it compares to Proctor and just in general?
Yeah, Miller is a guy who has another guy who's a lot of experience, has been kind of in the draft cycle for years. You watch some guys who might be draft eligible and then they end up going back. So he's been, at least for the last, I watched a little bit of him last year. I didn't really like his tape last year. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. And I think that was pretty much the consensus for everyone because not a lot of people were talking about him as a first round prospect. But I do think he took another step this year in 2025 to kind of put him in that first round range, or at least on the radar. Really good size, really long arms. I think he has 35-inch arms. Let me just double check. It was just under 35 inches.
Was surprising.
I think he was 35 inches at the Senior Bowl. I believe he was at the Senior Bowl. And then all the combine measurements were a little bit shorter. But anyway, he's got really good size, 6'6.5", 317, almost 35-inch arms, wingspan. The athleticism, I think, is there. He has enough foot quickness to stay at tackle. 504 in the 40, 175 in the 10-yard split. So I don't think he's like an insane athlete, but I think he's certainly a good enough athlete to stick at tackle. He kind of lunges a little bit. I don't think he's really good with his hands. And the thing that he kind of like lunges and kind of bends at the waist a little bit too much too. And that's common for college guys, but I think my concern with him is this is a guy with a lot of experience, and I don't really want to draft a guy who's a 4-year starter who's I don't want to call him raw because I don't think he's raw, but I do think there's still more development there. And if he's going to take that next step in that development, why hasn't he taken it already? Like, is this just kind of who he is? Does he lack maybe some flexibility that prevents him from really taking that next step? I don't know what it is. I kind of struggle with his evaluation, but I will say he's big, he's strong. We talk about a guy who moves people off the ball. That's Blake Miller. Blake Miller can move guys off the ball. He's athletic. He's got all the traits that you want in a tackle. He did play a little bit at left tackle, I think, but it was only like 100 snaps in a few games. Either it might have even been in 2024. I can't remember. Yeah. But he's got all the traits and everything like that. It's just a little bit rough around the edges. And like I said, you kind of want your guy who's 4 years of starting experience to be a little bit more refined kind of coming into the league.
Yeah. As a run blocker, I thought that he showed a violent, very intentional demeanor, which I liked. But then there were times where it was like, I don't know. I think it was, because you're right, his power as a run blocker was really evident at times, but then other times it felt a little underwhelming to me. And some of that might have been, longer arms. It's harder to gain control of the rep a little later, maybe late hands, or maybe just like that bend, that pliable, like it kind of through his core isn't quite there. Mm-hmm. So his ability to stay latched can be kind of rough without getting holding penalty. So maybe that's more what I was seeing with some of the run blocking like questions there. But ultimately, I mean, I thought once he's latched, he does a good job replicating his hands and firing his feet to get that vertical displacement off the line of scrimmage. I thought he had enough flexibility to generally strain in pass pro. I'm not so sure about in run blocking to be able to keep driving guys through a strain position, but I thought that there were times where he was a little slow to process pass rush games as they were coming at him, and kind of recognize them and react. Now there were early on in his tape, I felt like, okay, he got beat by a stunt, and there was like, okay, the same game, he sees the same stunt again and he doesn't get beat again. So there was like that aspect of, okay, he's seeing it and recognizing it and getting better from it. But it seemed like that was every game to an extent, where I was kind of like, okay, well, why does this keep happening that way? Maybe that's coaching, it's tough to really know. But there were times where I thought his hands looked really savvy against like spin moves and really being able to react to things as they were coming to him. But then other reps where I thought his hands were slow and easily anticipated, like edge rushers kept catching his hands mid punch and taking them away. So like a lot of similar to what you're saying, it's kind of like, is this just who he is? Like a guy who's, I think he's going to be a fine starter in the NFL. I'm just not sure how high that ceiling goes, because I'm continually questioning, like, why isn't this aspect better? There's a lot that feels like it could be better or should be better, but hasn't quite gotten there. Maybe as a candidate, he gets the right coach and everything starts to click better. But to me, for my eval now, I'd say it's a lower ceiling for me on him. But I think that he's going to walk in the league and be an okay starter.
Yeah, I think he's probably the guy I struggle with the most of like all of these guys in terms of evaluation, just because he's big, he's long, he's athletic. Like that is such a good building, like foundation to build off of. But so it's like he should, like based on that information, he should have a high ceiling. Like he's got all the traits that you want,
but the tape doesn't feel like it.
But the tape doesn't feel like it. It's like a feel thing with him. It's like there's something missing here, and I can't quite put my finger on what it is, but it's limiting how I feel about him a little bit. That being said, I do like him. I do like him a good amount. If the Bears took him at 25, I think that's in a range where I'd feel comfortable taking a guy like that, because like you said, I could easily see him just going to a team. He clicks with the offensive line coach, and just everything clicks, and then he's, he reaches that ceiling that I don't think he necessarily has.
Especially coming from Clemson, man, where I'm just like, none of these guys ever seem to get better at Clemson.
Yeah, but he's a right, that Clemson. I mean, Peter Woods, TJ Parker, like Clemson was the most frustrating team to watch in terms of NFL draft evaluation. But Miller, he's a right tackle. Like he's obviously not going to play right tackle for the Bears, so you got to move him to the left side. That kind of muddies the water on this. If we're just talking Proctor versus Miller, like this is a tough one. I think I would go Proctor. Yeah, I have Proctor as a higher graded player. I think he's just he can be special if he wants to be. And then the ability to move inside, I think, is big for him too. I don't really see Miller having that ability.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think he plays pretty tall too. And let's see, I have Proctor above Miller as well in my grades. They're not terribly far apart, but Proctor is the higher graded prospect for me. All right, so now we're moving into some of the interior guys. So for our 6 and 11, we've got Emmanuel Pregnon against Trey Zuhn III. Pregnon out of Oregon, a left guard / right guard. And Trey Zuhn III out of Texas A&M, a left tackle who projects best inside he has played some center, but I imagine if he's projecting the center, he could probably project a guard as well.
Yeah, most likely. I like Pregnon a good amount. When you watch Pregnon, like the first thing that stood out to me was he just looks like an NFL player. He's got an NFL body. Like he's 6'4", 315, 11-inch hands, which is just crazy. And that shows up on tape too. Like the guy has giant hands, and 33 and 5/8 inch arms, so almost 34-inch arms for an interior player is really good. He looks like a tackle playing guard. I think he does create some good movement in the run game. The thing about him is I kind of expected him when I first watched him to be kind of like, I looked at his size. I just, saw him, on the very first snap. I was like, oh, this guy's going to be a mauler. And he can maul guys in the run game. It does happen. He's got heavy hands. He's got a good punch. But I was really impressed with him as a pass blocker. It was just something that surprised me, just because I always look at a guy and most of the time you look at a guy, you kind of figure out how he's going to play, like his play style. You look at Mauigoa at tackle, one snap, you're like, I could feel like I have a good idea of what this play style is going to be. Pregnon surprised with how well he moved in pass protection. I thought he was really advanced with his hand usage. I know I've seen some scout reports saying that he's not, but I thought he was actually pretty advanced with his hand usage. I think it also helps having those 11-inch hands. because when he gets his hands on you, kind of the rep is over. So really, really good prospect there. He's not as athletic as maybe you want. I think his combine actually surprised me in the opposite way. He had a 1.82 split. I didn't think he was going to be the most athletic guy. I thought he'd be a little bit better than that in terms of a 10-yard split, because I do think he gets out of his stance relatively quickly. Like I said, I don't think athleticism was going to be his calling card, but
what's weird about that is he showed good bursts in the broad, though. So he showed good jumps, but not good short area run, which is interesting.
Yeah, he had the highest vertical jump of any offensive lineman, or I believe 35 inches. So that was maybe he just had I didn't see him run the 40, so maybe he just stumbled or something like that. So
I do feel like that question kind of matched the tape, though, because there were some reps where I was like, oh, okay, there's some bursts, and there were other reps where I was like, he is slow, So it was kind of all over. It felt like.
Yeah, it was almost like there were some reps where he was even belabored getting out of his stance a little bit. But then there were also other reps where that wasn't an issue. So maybe that's just a stance issue. Maybe it's a coaching thing he can change to just get a little more consistent there. Trey Zuhn, another guy. It's fun watching Trey Zuhn because you see him at left tackle and immediately say, this is not a left tackle. He just doesn't look like a left tackle. He's got real short, stubby arms. What did he
31
32 and a half.
I'm surprised.
Even 32 and a half is surprising to me. I thought he was going to be closer to 32, but he's just got that wide frame, short legs, short arms. He just looks like an interior player. He's going to be an interior player. But I think as a pass protector, he was actually he held his own, despite his limitations that he has physically. I think he held his own as a left tackle in college. And those are the guys that I really like, because he's crafty. He doesn't have a lot of length, but he uses every inch of his length effectively. There are times where it shows up, and that's just a physical issue, but he was able to get around it in certain ways just with how smart he was. Another guy who's really, really experienced. He did take snaps at center, which is really good. I kind of haven't watched those games, and I'm going to go back and watch them now because I wanted to evaluate him as a tackle guard more so than a center. So I want to go back and watch those tapes at center now that the Bears need one, and kind of evaluate him more there. But
I think he's really smart. CFP against Miami, he took 5 snaps at center, and I was watching that game. It was like, holy shit! 3 of those 5 snaps I graded as plus. I was like, okay, I gotta see some more center tape.
Yeah, but yeah, I think he moves really well. He didn't test at the combine. I don't have it here, but I think he moves pretty well. And he has the athleticism to play center, and it seems like that's where most people have his future position, as opposed to guard. Although I think he's a guy who could probably play guard as well.
Yeah. So with Pregnon, the first game I watched, I was like, holy shit, this dude's a monster. And then I watched 2 more games. It was like, okay, I saw some more of the flaws, some more of the the questions with that short area burst. It's kind of come and go, and I almost think his length is it can be a bit of a detriment to him at guard a little bit. Because I do think he is really long. I know his measurement was 33 and a half or a little over that. I think it might be a little longer than that, honestly, because they seemed a little longer than that to me, where there's a bit more of a wind up, a bit more of a it takes some time for him to get his hands into guys. You're right, the big hands, I think they do make it easier for him to hit aiming points because he's just got more surface area. But I do think they're a touch slower than I want them to be. And with Trey Zuhn, man, honestly, I think if this dude tests his pro day, I think his 3-cone is going to be immensely good. I think his feet are so quick, and honestly, if there are any sub 33-inch arm guys other than Spencer Fano that I think can stick at tackle, I think it might be Trey Zuhn. I do think he'd be great at center, but I think he can be passable at tackle if you need him to. Kind of like almost like a Graham Barton. We saw him play some tackle for the Buccaneers last year in a pinch. I think his feet are good enough, and he's crafty enough with his hands and has fast enough hands where I'm like, okay, I think Trey Zuhn, if the Bears drafted Trey Zuhn in the second round and asked him to play some left tackle this year, I wouldn't be shocked, because I think that he has the traits to be able to survive there.
Yeah, if Theo Benedict could play left tackle for the Bears, then Trey Zuhn could absolutely play left tackle for the Bears. Is the way I look at it. Like, I mean, that's what I'm going to be saying that about a lot of guys. Like, anytime someone says like to me like that guy's can't play left tackle, but like Theo Benedict did it, like this guy can do it too. Not to, I don't want to make it sound like I'm knocking Theo Benedict. Like he's a good player in his own right, but I mean, he was out there kind of fighting for his life at times. Yeah. So, but Trey Zuhn, yeah, I mean, I just looked it up because I wanted to double check because I saw this earlier. The guy had I know PFF grades, take with a grain of salt, obviously, but the guy had a 96.8 pass blocking grade this year at left tackle.
He was like so good.
That's probably one of the highest pass block grades I've ever seen at any position. Like, now, I mean, the guy held his own at the left tackle position, and it's not like the guys in college have short arms; they have long arms too. So it was impressive what he was able to do given his athletic physical limitations. I should say doesn't have athletic limitations. I think he is a very good athlete.
I mean, I think watching him, I felt like I was watching Joe Thuney in college play left tackle, honestly, because it's like I watched Joe Thuney tackle, and I'm like, this guy can't run block at this position to save his life, but he's just somehow getting the job done consistently in pass pro. And I feel like that's where Trey Zuhn's going to be if he plays left tackle in the NFL. Is like, I don't think he's going to be able to run block very well. You're going to be limited to his own run scheme and not trying to run to his side that often because he just can't corral guys and they get that first contact that well. But in pass pro, I think he can survive. And like, I'm really interested in him for the Bears.
Yeah, I'm in terms of just these two players, like head to head, who we're going with, I'm okay with going with Zuhn. I don't know if Pregnon was really on the radar, to be honest.
Yeah.
He's a good player. I think Zuhn would definitely, given his position versatility, which is kind of what the Bears need more than anything right now, I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to our 3-14 seed. And once we get past the first round here, we'll be pretty quick through the rest of it.
Yeah, we've talked about all the guys, yeah.
But we have our 3 seed, Vega Ioane, out of Penn State, left guard, I think. Or I think he played left and right. And Chase Bisontis, left guard, out of Texas A&M. What are your thoughts here, Steve?
Love both these guys. Vega Ioane is some of the most fun tape to watch. I think there's an argument to be made. He is the best offensive lineman on this list. I think it's a pretty easy argument to be made as well. Really, really good player. Really good pass protector, really good run blocker as well. He's another guy who I kind of like knew was going to be a really good run blocker. You look at him, he's like, this guy's a big mauler. He'll move people off the line, but then is really, really adept with his hands, hand placement, timing, really just really, really good there. He has that. And then as a run blocker, like I said, he can move guys off the line. I think he's more athletic than he's given credit for. I know he probably didn't test, right? He did some jumps, but
did he?
But he didn't run the 40. But I think he's really athletic. There's that one snap. It was a 2024 rep against UCLA where they actually lined him up as like a slot wide receiver, sent him in motion across the line of scrimmage, and he just blew up this poor end or linebacker, whatever it was. Just kind of made his day miserable. So that always just sticks out in my mind. I think the things that Ben Johnson could do, I mean, the Bears have no chance of drafting him, but the things that Ben Johnson could do with him, I think are really, really could be really awesome just based on how he was used at Penn State. But really, really good player. Got no chance of the Bears most likely getting him. I like Chase Bisontis as well. He's my guard 3. So I have Ioane, Pregnon, and then Bisontis as my third guard. Kind of as a pass protector, at least, I see Ioane and Bisontis. Well, I shouldn't say. Let me say this again. Ioane is the better pass protector, but I view them similarly in terms of how well they use their hands. I think Bisontis also has really good feet to kind of stay in front of guys. I do think he isn't always as a run blocker. It leaves a lot to be desired as a run blocker, I'll say. But as a pass protector, Bisontis is, I'd put his tape up against most guys on this list. I think he's really, really adept with his hands and does kind of everything you want. But the way the reason he's 14 and Ioane is 3 is in the run game. He doesn't really create a lot of movement. He's athletic, but I think he struggles kind of just working out in space, just kind of connecting with guys at the second level. There, but I think he's a really good prospect, especially as a pass blocker.
Yeah, I agree on Bisontis. I had him graded really highly in pass pro, but I was pretty underwhelmed in the run game with his tape.
Yeah.
I felt like he's a zone only blocker, and even then, I felt like his rules need to be cleaned up a little, and his understanding of the why behind what he's doing. But with Vega, like man, that dude's a pro ready stud. Like he
Yeah.
is just an outstanding blocker. I was shot. Like when I saw his frame, I was like, here we go again, like another one of these guys. And then I
Yeah.
saw a move. I was like, not another one of these guys.
Yeah. No.
This guy has got the goods and the massive like SpongeBob SquarePants type frame. Like there's a lot to like with Vegas. So like this one's an easy one to me. Where like I think Vega
Yeah.
is like if you're talking a guard, no one's passing on Vega.
Yeah.
All right, next up, we have our 7-10 matchup with Jalen Farmer out of Kentucky, offensive guard at 7, and Gennings Dunker at 10 out of Iowa, who's a right tackle currently, but he's a most likely a guard in the NFL, I think. But Steve, what are you thinking?
Mm-hmm. Start with Farmer. I really like Farmer more than so than I thought I would. I kind of watched him. I didn't watch him, before the Senior Bowl, but he really impressed me at the Senior Bowl. So I went back. I was like, okay, I got to watch this guy. And if you talk about a guy who is violent, heavy hands, people mover, like that is Farmer. Like you see him in the run game, he's creating displacement. In the pass game, he can stop guys in their tracks with his punch. It's and his anchor as well. Like, I don't think I saw a single rep of a guy pushing him back more than a step in terms of his anchor. Like even guys that were 330 pounds, like he was going toe to toe with them. So really like him from a power standpoint. That was my kind of evaluation just off the tape. And then he goes to the combine and runs a 4.93 with a 1.75 split. And I was like, I didn't think he was like unathletic, but I did not see that coming. So that's gonna make me go back to him and just be like, okay, what did I miss something? Like, because I think it was almost a case of this guy is so powerful and such heavy hands that he can't be that athletic as well. Like in my mind, like that's kind of what I thought. I had him pegged as like, oh, this guy's just man scheme. He's just gonna downhill run scheme, stuff like that. But I did kind of go back and just watch. I watched maybe like the first 20 snaps of game just because I had some time. And I did see him on a pole, and he did kind of get out in front, so it wasn't. So I was like, okay, maybe I need to do another dive into him because maybe I missed something there. But I think he's really good player. I don't think enough people are talking about him as much. He's just behind Bisontis for me, and honestly, if I go, that was before I go back to him, so he could even potentially jump Bisontis in my eyes if once I watch him again. And then Dunker, I mean, who doesn't love Jennings Dunker? Like the guy, you saw him at the combine with the red hair, the mullet, the mustache, like, and he plays. I mean, he plays like the guy across from him, said something about his mother and is trying to kill him, which I always like to see. I think he has athletic limitations. He's not a tackle in the NFL most likely. I think you don't even. There are guys on here like Proctor, like you play him a tackle, and if he fails, you move him inside the guard. I don't think you even mess around with that with Dunker. Maybe he could, hold his own at tackle, but I think you just put him at guard and let him go. I do think he has some athletic limitations. He tested a little bit better than I thought he would. I mean, 5.18 isn't great, but it's not. It's also not terrible. 1.83 10-yard split, again, not great, but not like awful. But I thought he was even going to test worse than that. There were some times when he gets out in space and it looks like he's just lumbering. So I question that. That is really what his evaluation comes down to me. I think he's a little bit stiff. I think he's just not super athletic. It's tough for those guys to compete, but he plays really hard. And I'm not going to count Jennings Dunker out because I think he just kind of has that offensive line mentality that I would bring into the offensive line room just for like his presence alone. Like I feel like he's probably a good a good locker room guy. He's going to set the tone in that room. So I think that's valuable in its own right. And he's he got decent tape as well. So a guy like in this matchup, I would go Farmer though.
Yeah, with Dunker, with all the fanfare around him, I was expecting more athletically from him than I saw on tape. But like you said, like O-line vibes are through the roof with this guy. Like he is O-line central, like what they are supposed to be and look like. I think that he's probably a guard, like you said, like just straight from day one, kick him in at guard. I do think that he plays a little upright for the position and is a little tight, but I don't know. The dude's just going to find a way. I feel like he's going to stick around the NFL for a long time. His floor to me is like a spot starter. His ceiling is a good starter. Like, I don't think he has a Pro Bowl in his future, but like he's a guy who could come in and end up being a good starter for you if everything goes right. Everything goes wrong, I think he just hangs around as a quality backup for years and years. Because he's, like you said, he fits in that O-line room perfectly. I think he's going to be a great culture setter within any team that he goes to. Now with Jalen Farmer, I mean, I felt like I saw the athleticism from the jump with this dude. I thought I saw burst, I saw power, I saw basically everything physically that you want from a guy, and at guard and mentality wise. I thought he's not afraid of contact at all. He likes to be the aggressor. He likes to go punch people in the mouth and really be the tone setter out there for your offensive line. I think he gets out of control a lot. I think there's still a lot of development to do with him, but like from a pure physical standpoint, I think that he's really what you're looking for, an offensive guard. And I was very excited about his tape and his ceiling within that. I do think he has a bit lower of a floor because he is out of control a fair amount, and like it still has a lot to figure out from a hand placement standpoint, strike timing standpoint, and just like understanding the why behind what he's doing. But to me, I mean, this is an easy pick of Jalen Farmer to take the win here.
Yeah, and when he does get that timing right and the hand placement right, like it's a thing of beauty because the guys just stop.
Yeah, he's a juggernaut when he has everything hitting right.
Yeah.
All right, now our final first round matchup: number 2 seed Spencer Fano against number 15 seed Jude Bowry. Spencer Fano, right tackle, has played a little left out of Utah. Jude Bowry, left tackle out of Boston College. Steve, I know Jude Bowry going up against Fano is breaking your heart a little here. What are you thinking?
It is breaking my heart a little bit because I love Jude Bowry. I mean, Spencer Fano, obviously the tape speaks for itself. If you're just a trust tape guy, then you're going to draft this guy high because the tape is pretty good. The question marks I have with Fano just come from a physical standpoint. He's got just over 32 in an inch arms. Like that's shorter than Will Campbell. He's got a little bit of longer wingspan than Will Campbell. And I say that just because that's in everyone's minds. I think Will Campbell still has a chance to improve and kind of put that kind of narrative behind him, but he does have short arms. There's no denying that. And I think it shows up on tape from time to time, but really athletic, good play demeanor. He does move guys off the spot despite his size. But I don't think he's necessarily I wouldn't describe him as like a people mover, but he's got good displacement there. Really good athleticism, obviously. What do we got? 4.91 40-yard dash, 172, 10-yard split. That 10-yard split is exactly what you want out of your offensive lineman. So really good. I mean, I think he's going to be off the board when the Bears pick and he plays the right tackle, but I really like Jude Bowry. I think he's really athletic, first of all. He proved that at the combine. 175, 10-yard split, 34.5-inch vertical, 9 feet 7 inches in the broad jump. Really, really athletic, really explosive player. He kind of is, to me, I mean, he's lower, in my rankings, but he's kind of like the left tackle Max Iheanachor, I would say a little bit. Maybe not as violent, maybe not as powerful, but he's really, really athletic. It does kind of has all the traits that you want. It's just raw around the edges right now. But there's so much to work with there and to develop him into more than what he is right now. And yeah, I mean, like I keep on saying it, but if Theo Benedict can do it, Jude Bowry can do it. If you draft Jude Bowry and day 2, wherever he's drafted, like you could get by with him at left tackle as you develop him. And I think he's got, in terms of ceiling, like if we're just talking ceilings on these guys, I think maybe like Freeling and Iheanachor are ahead of him, and I could make the argument that he's third on this list. Honestly, I could maybe even make the argument that he's 2 or 1 on this list because I think he's got an incredible ceiling. I think
I'd put him right there with both of them because I tend to like my ceiling tends to stop it. Like if your tape isn't high enough, my ceiling stops at Pro Bowl. Like I'm not going to all pro for a guy whose tape isn't developed enough. So to me, that's like he's on par with the Iheanachor and the Freeling on this list for top ceiling.
Yeah. So if you can get that guy on day 2, like I think that's a home run pick for the Bears. So with that in mind, we don't have a big upset here. Spencer Fano's the better player. Like I'm not going to argue that, but I might put Jude Bowry ahead to the next round just because I think he fits what the Bears want. He's a left tackle over right tackle. I think Fano. I think Fano would be too undersized for what the Bears want. I don't think he would necessarily be high on their board. So I would put Jude Bowry through to the next round. But curious what you think.
So with Bowry, I mean, first note was very impressive power when his technique's right. Like, and I think his anchor makes up a lot of his poor hand usage and timing issues. Like at the college level, he's able to just anchor down regardless, despite guys getting into his chest, which is really impressive.
Yeah.
And I think he has some of the best athletic traits of any offense tackle in the class. Like he is right there with anybody. Now, there's a ton of want to as a run blocker. I'm not sure if he has any clue where he's going or why he is going there, but a ton of want to, like very feisty. On the negative, I have his feet tend to stop in pass protection when he misses his initial punch. He doesn't have any real counters or tools for recovery. And I thought it was interesting in his Boston College tape. They didn't ask him to read out stunts very often. They just asked him to man up and follow the guy when he was faced with stunts that I saw, at least, which was just interesting. It seemed to be how BC was coaching it, but that makes me wonder, like, how difficult is that transition to the NFL going to be, where he's asked to really read stuff out and react to it as opposed to just chasing the guy. And if you saw something different, speak up. But that's what
I'm just
a few games.
Sorry, you probably saw the look on my face. I was trying to remember Ozzie Trapillo's tape at Boston College. Yeah. I was trying to like, did he have stunts? I just can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember. And then I thought, his hands, he's just always with the 2-hand punch and pass pro can be pretty predictable. But this dude absolutely looks the part physically, and he's very aggressive out there with his hands, and he craves contact, like, which is something that I value highly. Now with Spencer Fano, I think this guy can stick a tackle, honestly. I was so impressed with how efficient his hands are and effective, how good his aim is with his hands in the run game, especially. And I thought that he had jolting power with that punch to freeze defenders when he lands it. He closes space so effectively in pass pro, not just the run game, but like he closes that space, has very quick hands to pretty consistently generate that first contact. Now, if he doesn't generate that first contact, that's where, he can get in trouble. But I thought that he did a really good job of consistently doing that. And that's where, like, we talk like Will Campbell last year with the short arms. That's where some of the concern came in for me, is like, he's not consistently generating that first contact. He's waiting and reacting. Whereas when I watch Fano, I'm like, okay, this dude is being the aggressor. This dude is taking advantage of the situation and really saying, I am here to do this, and I'm going to do it. Which is important when you have those shorter arms. I thought that he had the foot speed to match that and be able to mirror. I was really impressed with his ability to mirror edge rushers and change direction. Just, to me, he played a lot like a coach's son too, which was really, you love to see that. It combined with everything I've already said, a guy who also plays through the whistle and has a hot motor, with that good change of direction skills. He might not be the biggest or strongest player on earth. There are reps where he is kind of pushed back in the run game and stuff, but the arm length really sucked for me. I had to knock him down my board a bit because of it, just because I think that impacts your ceiling. I really do.
Yeah.
Like you look around the league, you just don't see guys with the shorter arms making Pro Bowls, becoming the all-pro player. They might be good, but there's a clear ceiling on some of those guys. So, I'm okay with going Jude Bowry here, just because I don't think Fano is going to be there at 25 anyways. And I do think there are some limitations there with him as a run blocker, but I do like Fano quite a bit still.
Yeah. I think with Fano and also Lomu, when I think about them, I didn't talk about this Lomu, but there's also just not a lot of like true pass sets on tape. I looked it up, like they had the fewest true pass sets of anyone kind of on this list.
Yeah.
And even the ones that are technically true pass sets, they still like move in the pocket a little bit. So, but I do think Fano has still a chance to stick at tackle as well, because he wins with his feet more than he wins with his length, and he does make first contact as well. Guy I was kind of like
very
thinking
accurate
about, and
hands.
very accurate. Yeah. Kind of guy I was thinking about it. And I have not watched this guy much in the NFL, at least not like studying this. And I can't remember how long his arms were coming out, but Troy Patanu for the Steelers. Do you remember how long he was? I know he
He
was.
was
I
like
don't think he was.
34. I want to
Was he
say
34?
he was. I was surprised by how long they were because I thought his hands were pretty
Yeah.
undeveloped.
Their
So
their tape reminds me of each other.
so he was
Patano,
34 and a half.
Okay, so he had longer arms, but I think from
But his feet, I agree with his
their feet are very, very similar. And so yeah, I mean, like you said, Fano, the ceiling isn't there because of the length, but I think he could still stick there. And the thing about him though is like if he can't stick a tackle, like I don't really see him going to guard. I think center would be like his next option if he gets in the NFL and it's not working to tackle. I think because he's kind of he's too undersized. I don't know. I think he would be a pretty good center.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'd be. I think he's a very smart player, which I think plays very well at center. Let's see. I didn't even check what he measured in at. So he's what 6'5", 311. I mean,
I'm surprised by that size, to be honest. I thought he was going to be like 6'4", 300. To be honest,
I thought he was going to be a little smaller too, but honestly, like I just believe in the guy's tape a lot. I think he's going to figure out wherever he needs to be playing. Like if it's not left tackle, I think in his own scheme, I think he'd be a good guard. I don't think in a gap scheme he'd excel at guard, but like I just believe in the guy's ability to figure it out because I really believe in the football player there.
Yeah.
But let's kick it back to the top. So we got Mauigoa versus Iheanachor in the second round. I think Mauigoa, like they're both right tackles, and Mauigoa is the higher graded prospect. So
yeah, I think that's really what it comes down to.
And then second round, we got Monroe Freeling against Kadyn Proctor again. I mean, I think Freeling, we both have the higher grade on here, and they're both left tackles. Like Freeling is, you wouldn't take Proctor over him.
Yeah, I have a feeling I already know who like this final matchup's going to be. Yeah. I agree, Freeling.
Right, and then for Trey Zuhn versus Vega, I feel
this one's more interesting.
Yeah, like
I mean, Vega's the better player, obviously.
But I think
if we're talking Bears fit, like I think Zuhn is a better fit for what the Bears need than Ioane is.
Just because of that potential at left tackle, which I don't know. I feel like we're the only people who have said that though, which makes me like hesitate. But like, I do feel like there is some potential there for him to stick a tackle.
Yeah, I mean the thing is like if he doesn't stick a tackle, he's going to be a center, and those are the two positions they need for the Bears. So I mean, I think
it.
Yeah, I mean obviously Ioane is the better player. No one's arguing that, but fit for the Bears, I think it makes sense. Especially since Ioane probably won't even be on the board when the Bears are picking.
Right. That makes it easier. That Ioane's not even really a real option for the Bears.
Yeah.
Because like let's be honest, if both were there at 25, they're going Vega. Like you have to go Vega.
Yeah. But I think if Vega Ioane is on the board when the Bears are 25, I don't care if they don't need a guard. Pick him and figure it out later.
Yeah. But Bowry versus Farmer, I mean, this is definitely Bowry because it's left tackle.
Yeah. Left tackle. Agreed.
Okay. Back to the top. Mauigoa versus Freeling. This is a debate-worthy one.
I mean, it's my tackle 1 and tackle 2. I think it's. I mean, Freeling is I think just such a perfect fit for the Bears. I think he's what they need at left tackle. He's athletic. He's long. He's big. I mean,
I think he is
on the board,
what Ben Johnson looks for, like physically. That he is like to a T what Ben Johnson wants.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty easy one there.
Even though Mauigoa, like I have a higher grade on it, I think is the better prospect.
Yeah, this one I think is harder. I think there is this one is I actually don't know who this would be because I think both have a say for this. I mean, Trey Zuhn, we just talked about he can play left tackle potentially. If he can't play left tackle, he is center. The Bears need both of those positions. Jude Bowry definitely has a higher ceiling if that's what they want to go for. Just because with the size and everything and the length and everything like that. But I don't know. This one's tough. I could go either way. I would probably lead Bowry because I just love Bowry. I think I'm a little bit higher on them than most people. But if you want to go Zuhn, I would have not. I'd be okay with that.
I mean, I'm with you. I think I'm a little higher on Bowry than most, but like even though I'm trying to knock my grade down, it's like I'm just having a hard time figuring out how. But I think for the Bears right now, you're looking for floor more than ceiling when you're looking at this.
That's fair.
I think Zuhn is the higher floor here, even though I don't know where Zuhn is even projected to go. Like I think I have a higher grade on him than
Yeah.
most. Like I've got
I
he's only a touch below Bowry in my rankings overall, but
yeah. And I will say, I thought he was going to have way shorter than 32.5 inch arms.
yeah.
And to be honest, with the issues that they've had measuring at the combine, like he could even
Mhm.
be close to 33, if not 33 inches. So
That's
I
always
think that's something so let's go with Zoom because I think
yeah.
I agree with you. The floor is something that they really need.
Yeah. And then
But
our
that being said,
championship round, we got Monroe Freeling against Trey Zuhn III, and I mean it's Monroe Freeling.
like you said it before, he's just exactly what Ben Johnson wants. I think I know people want the Bears to go defense with their first pick, but I think if he's on the board at 25, they run to the podium and take him. He's exactly
I
what Ben
think
Johnson
Dennis Allen
wants.
might burn Hallis Hall to the ground, but I agree.
He might, but I think he would just this guy, like, he has a chance to be one of the best tackles in football in 3-4 years.
Yeah.
Trey Zuhn doesn't have that ability. Yeah,
No.
he definitely has the higher floor, but with 25, I'm okay with taking a little bit of a swing there.
Yeah.
Um,
I think Freeling's
so
floor is high enough that you're comfortable with that. Like with
yeah,
Bowery, it's like I don't know if Bowery's going to be a good NFL player for 3 years,
oh yeah,
but
Bowery could
with
be out of the
Freeling,
NFL in 2 years.
right.
So
Right. So, all right, this is a fun exercise. I like doing them
mhm.
this way, but we'll be back for you guys in a few days on Thursday. Tom and Luke are going to be on here talking wide receivers in a similar format, hopefully, as long as we can get it set up with them. But thank you guys for watching, listening. Steve, why don't you tell everyone out there where they can find you, find any work you do, your podcast, that type of stuff.
Yeah, so follow me on Twitter at CFC Bears. I'm a co-host of the Hallis Beat podcast at Hallis Beat. We usually release our podcast on Friday morning.
Yeah. So make sure to go check out the Hallis Beat. And, as long as we're here, might as well show you the schedule. So the week of the 16th, we'll be doing running backs with Danny Meehan and Ron Luce, and then linebackers with Danny, Ron, and then Nick DeMeo. On the week of the 23rd, Steve and I will be back to do interior defensive line, and then Steve and Tom will be doing edge rushers as well. The week of the 30th, Nick DeMeo, Luke O'Grady, and Seth Conklin will be on here to talk cornerbacks, and then later in the week they'll all be back to talk safeties before we finalize our board the second week of April, and then we'll start doing mocks on here. And then next thing you know, we are at the NFL draft. So make sure to stick around, check these out as they are coming out. It's some of the content I'm most proud of that we do here. So we put a lot of work into this, and as long as you're here, we'll give you a quick peek at our board, which is still still a lot of positions that need to be added on here, but this is mostly like linebackers, edge rushers, D tackles, and O line right now, and this is how it's sitting currently. No, it can change a lot between now and draft day, but this is for the grades that we have in here, how our board is shaping up. Thank you guys for watching, Steve. Thank you for joining me, and we'll go ahead and get it. Steve, give us a good old fashioned bear down, and we'll close this thing out.
Bear down, baby.
Bear down. Thanks, guys.